Massive respect and love to everybody who've been checking in, you know. Give thanks for the love. Everything blessed. Give thanks, you know.
Zelino, can I come in?
Yes.
If your egg floats, it's very old and shouldn't be eaten. If it sinks to the bottom but stays upright, it's getting older and should be eaten soon. If the egg sinks to the bottom, it is very fresh.
So today we're going to talk about the Constitution of Jamaica, and I'm going to offer you a bit more clarity onto what the Constitution of Jamaica as it relates to your fundamental right to freedom of movements as guaranteed under the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom of the Constitution of Jamaica. In fact, that element of the Constitution was newly inserted as of 2011 when that Constitutional Amendment Act was passed in Parliament in 2010. And so I'm going to give you a bit more insight because a lot of you have been asking about that insight. You want to know more, give you more details. So here goes. Now, under the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom, Section 13, it makes it clear that these rights are guaranteed, and these rights are only supposed to be interfered with, abridged or abrogated if there is demonstrable justified grounds. It also states that Parliament shall pass no laws, and yes, Parliament is only one is the body that makes laws, but laws as defined by the Constitution are pretty much any written or unwritten rule that, as we said, includes the common law, which some people call judge-made laws. When judge look at the law and be like, hey, in keeping with the Constitution, this is what Parliament was saying, you know, and clarified what Parliament was or was not saying. Because Parliament can pass no law unless that law is in alignment with the Constitution. So remember that. And no agent of the state, including the police, is supposed to take any action that interferes with the rights, those fundamental rights of a citizen, unless they have demonstrable justified grounds to do so. Got that? Yes, everyone. Actually, yes, this is a little bit of insight about me. This is actually my island. Here, I'm actually developing it. Yep, it's an island. Our islet, some development, you know, jump off script. And this is where I am filming this video at the moment. Yeah, development right here. So yes, back to you. So then, in having said that, what happens then is this. Under the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom, Section 13, it states that one of the fundamental rights that we have is the freedom of movement. What does that mean? It says, or what does it say? It says every person, not citizen, every person lawfully in Jamaica is entitled to move freely. I'm using my own words a bit. Yes? To move freely about Jamaica. That's what it says. Move freely. And under that said section that speaks to that Parliament shall make, Section 13, that speaks to that the fact that Parliament shall pass no law and no agent of state shall take any action which abridges, abrogates, or interferes with the rights of the citizens unless it's on demonstrable justified grounds in a free and fair democratic society. What does that mean? It means it's simple. Irrespective of what some people think, that the Road Traffic Act gives the police some unfeathered power, nothing now cover it, power to be able to stop a citizen and ask for driver's license and documents. That said constitution, in those words, are pretty much saying this: in a free and fair democratic society, the police only detain people whom have committed crimes or they have suspected to commit crimes. In a free and democratic society, no citizen is obligated to walk around with an ID to identify themselves. In a free, fair, and democratic society, no citizen is under an obligation to give up their rights. In a free and democratic society, the only time an officer, in keeping with section 14 of the Constitution, is allowed to detain or arrest a citizen is, on one of these grounds that is important to this, is when such officer has reasonable suspicion of an offense. Don't get me wrong, section 14 does state other times on which you can be detained or arrested, but none of them is relevant to when an officer is stopping you and interfering with your freedom of movements. All right. So clarifying section 22 of the current Road Traffic Act and section 20 of the one that is supposed to be in effect as of February. None of those sections, if you read them in alignment with the Constitution of Jamaica, gives the police unfeathered powers to stop you and ask you for documents and driver's license unless that officer has reasonable suspicion of some offense. That would be a demonstrable justified grounds in a free and fair society. Some reasonable suspicion of an offense or some reasonable cause, which is the officer not only suspect the offense, let me see you commit the offense, so it passed reasonable suspicion and has now gone to the stage of reasonable cause or probable cause. One of those words are used interchangeably. Yes? So then, as I said, in a free and fair democratic society, those are the words that the Constitution says, none of your rights, your fundamental rights, are supposed to be interfered with unless there is demonstrable justified grounds. So then, I'm not saying you can't waive your rights, because like some of you have said, crime is high in Jamaica. If you believe that you waiving your rights is a solution to crime, go ahead. But when officers of the state, agents of the state, are pretending as if there are no such rights and that they are the ultimate power, that is when people like me have a problem with it. As I said in previous video, I am a victim of some form of oppression by agents of the state, and I am tired of it. I am not willing to waive my rights. I am a law-abiding citizen. I follow the laws to the T, and I am unwilling to waive my rights unless I believe it is necessary in this society. Officers tend to misunderstand the powers under section 58 of the old or the current Road Traffic Act, which is the same provisions made in section 91 of the current act, which is they misunderstand it to say that they have unfettered powers to stop you. Nothing no go so. No parliament in Jamaica, the current one, the previous ones, would pass a law because they are bound to the Constitution that would give you, the police, unfeathered powers to stop anybody without some reasonable suspicion of an offense, which would be demonstrable justified grounds, as is required by the Constitution in order for an officer to which is an agent of the state, to be able to interfere with the fundamental rights of a person lawfully in Jamaica. That section 58 actually gives you the power to stop a vehicle to direct traffic. And Justice David Batts, in the ruling of Hemans versus the Attorney General, made that clear. And anybody who wants to read that act with sense and read it in alignment with the Constitution, like every single law made in this land is supposed to do, would read it to say that it does nothing but to give you the power, an officer the power to stop you to direct traffic. So basically, the officer put it and stop. You must stop, and that is to direct traffic. And that would be a demonstrable, justified ground in a free and democratic society. Because if the police would not have the power to stop a vehicle in to direct traffic, then what would happen? When something is happening, when the police have to run or drive a car, the police is stopping us to run and drive a car? No, you must obey, because the police in this free and democratic society is attempting to protect you and to protect the lives of the many. And remember, your constitutional rights don't trump the rights of the many. The rights of the many trump your constitutional rights. Let's talk about the SOE and the SOE regulations. My fellow Jamaicans and non-Jamaicans, people who are lawful in Jamaica, remember this. The SOE regulations are bound to be constitutional. They must be constitutional. They must be made in alignment with the Constitution. The Constitution has provided that regulations can be made or laws can be made under a state of emergency, whereby such regulations can actually not suspend, but they can restrict freedom of movement, but it must be for a reasonable amount of time. And it also, those regulations can also restrict liberty for a reasonable amount of time. None of the SOE regulations give the police unfettered powers to stop, search, or anything at all, unless they have at least reason to suspect that is so. So them can't just arbitrarily get up and say, oh, I'm going to search you, I'm going to search your car, if they don't have reason to suspect. And the law, as is laid down at all times, says that whenever it comes to the police, it cannot just be just reason. It must be reasonable reason to suspect. Because if you don't put the reasonable element in it, then it would mean that any officer could get up and say, oh, me did think that I want a reason for do it, and it gone. And it can't just be left up to the officer and his or her mind, because that would lead to a situation of abuse of power. So remember, there is nowhere in the SOE regulations that gives the power to the police to stop you and to ask for documents unless they have reasonable suspicion of an offense. The SOE regulations does say that the police can stop you, and then it says, and if they have reason to believe that an offense against the SOE regulations or the purpose of the regulations has been committed or is about to be committed, then the officer may search you. So remember, not even under an SOE are there any powers for a random stop and search, or a random stop and ask for documents, because you are not obligated under an SOE. You still have constitutional protection. It's just that freedom of movement and freedom of liberty may be limited, and it's on a case-by-case basis. So remember, one of the restrictions that the Constitution puts on SOEs and the regulations or the act itself is that whatever restrictions the government in forming those regulations want to impose, it must be a restriction that is reasonably justified for achieving the purpose of the SOE. If those regulations are not reasonably justified, and that's up for the court to decide, then the regulations are unconstitutional. And like in the case of Clark versus the Attorney General, the court would strike them out and award you millions of dollars in damages, all right, for breach of constitutional rights. So just remember, the Constitution is your book. It's your Bible. If you are a believer, if you have a religion, and are you a believer in anything at all, just remember, the Constitution is your book. It's your guide. It is there to protect you. And until and unless Parliament has amended that constitution in keeping with the said constitution itself, these rights are rights that are protected and guaranteed. Peace out. Thank you for subscribing. Don't order the law.
It is a candlelight with liquor white wine berry.